Hello. In this talk, we're going to look at answering the question, has English League football become less exciting? This is a piece of joint work that I, John Eales, have done with my colleague, Dr. Julian Stander, and another colleague from University College London, Professor Mario Cortina Borga. This is an outline of our talk, and we'll go through these 6 bullet points in turn. First of all, we're indebted to James Curley, who's kindly provided free of charge the data set on which this work is based. And there's a link there should you be interested in going and having a look at this rich data set. He also provides data on other leagues, and as you're probably aware, there's a lot of football data available on the internet if you want to search and look at that. So what are the aims of this talk? We want to present very briefly some of the analyses that we've performed on English League football, taken from James's database, and in the context of outreach, we want to illustrate how R can be used to extract information easily from the English League football database. And this gives a nice link to programming, which is a really important skill for students to develop for careers after they graduate. Reading the press, some commentators claim that English League football has become less exciting over time. We're interested in finding out whether this is actually true or not. And there's a lot of ways in which you can look at this. One thing we just note before going on is that up until 1981 in England, teams received 2 points for winning a match, 1 point for drawing, and no points for losing. For the 1981-82 season, this changed, and 3 points were awarded for a win, still 1 point for a draw and no points for a loss. There were various reasons for this. One was to try and make football more exciting. Now we're going to consider the number of goals scored in a match as a sort of proxy for a measure of excitement. So obviously the more goals scored, the more exciting the match. Since 1958, that's a pretty key date because that's where regionalisation ended in the Football League. Divisions 3 South and North were removed, and we've had 4 ordered tiers, Divisions 1, 2, 3 and 4. Division 1 became the Premier League in the early 1990s. So let's have a look at this graph here. The graph shows the average number of goals per match in each season since the Football League started in 1888. You'll see the graph over on the right hand side for Tier 4 starts from 1958, the point at which regionalisation ended. And we've fitted some splines on top of our graphs, and as you can see there's some interesting shapes here with a few peaks and dips, but certainly it would appear that in more recent years there have been fewer goals per match, perhaps with a little indication of an improvement in the last few seasons. So as I say, there have been changes, decrease since 1958, followed by some stabilisation, possibly improvements since 3 points for a win were introduced.
Thank you very much, John, for that. I'm Julian Stander, and I've also been working on this project. And what my contribution has been is automatically identifying where change points occur. So John has mentioned from the previous graph that there may be changes, and we've been picking out those changes by eye. But in fact, there are automatic methods that can be used to identify where those changes occur. And we previously developed methodology for detecting change points in a geoscientific context, in geoscientific processes. So we took that methodology and applied that to this different data context. And this is something that we often do in research, that we develop methods, statistical methods, in one particular context, and then we are able to take those methods and apply those to another context. So in this particular plot here, what I've done is I've applied one of these change point methods to the data that we saw before for tier 1. And this is working in what's called the Bayesian framework, which is something that we have particular expertise here at Plymouth. So you can see the plot of the data again. I'm plotting the data from 1958 onwards, and I've applied an automatic change point method to see where there's a change in the process being the average number of goals in a match. And the method has come back and told us that there's a change around the points that I'm indicating with my mouse here. I've shaded before the change and after the change in red and blue. So that's really quite important for us as scientists, because it's methodology that allows us automatically to identify change points. So it seems here that there was a big change in what was going on in tier 1 around about 1969. Now, of course, we don't know in detail why that is. There's been a lot of speculation about this. One possible reason could be a sort of feed on from the 1966 England World Cup victory. The Bayesian framework allows us to quantify the uncertainty associated with that change point. So I'm now going to hand you back to John, who's going to talk about draws.
So another thing we looked at was the percentage of drawn games per season. So there is an argument that the higher the proportion of draws, the less exciting the season. I mean, that's quite a controversial point in some ways, but it's certainly an argument. And we also looked at the proportion of low scoring matches and the proportion of high scoring matches as well. Let's have a look at the proportion of drawn matches here for a moment. So again, we've got 4 graphs looking at the 4 tiers of the Football League. And what we can see is that the proportion of draws has generally increased over time, which may indicate a reduction in excitement. There is perhaps some stabilization in recent seasons and perhaps even some reduction in tier 1 recently. But we're also interested in picking out particular teams. This is particularly interesting, I think, for outreach work where perhaps school children can choose their favorite team and pull out various statistics relating to that team. And it also provides an illustration of programming for data information extraction using R. So again, going back to my earlier point, this is important for careers after students graduate.
Yes, so thank you, John. So sorry, I was jumping in there, my apologies. What is R? Well, R is a computer program that's used now a lot to do data analysis. It's free. It can be used on multiple platforms, and it's very powerful for producing summaries of data and also for graphs. And the graphs that we showed you before were produced using R, using in particular a package called ggplot. Now, we've got code, and we're going to show you some of this code now, and we've got code for extracting information from the database that we were discussing before and that we've used up to now. I'm going to show you this code, and if you're interested in using it, then we may be able to help you further. We can certainly supply you with the code and talk you through setting it up. So John now is going to say a few words about Plymouth Argyle, and then we are going to look at extracting some information from the database about Plymouth Argyle.
Well, obviously, being based in Plymouth, a number of us have an interest in Plymouth Argyle Football Club. So trying to simulate a situation for outreach, let's suppose we've got a pupil here who wants to ask some specific questions about Plymouth Argyle.
So I'm now bringing up R now into the window, and there's a few questions that we're going to try to answer.
Okay, so let's start off with a simple question. When did Plymouth Argyle score the most goals at home in a single match?
So what I've got here is some R code. This is from a package called dplyr, and I'm obviously not going to go through the details of the code, but you can see filter selects out part of the database, and you can see there the words Plymouth Argyle. So I'm selecting out part of the database relevant to Plymouth Argyle. And if I send that code through, we get the answer.
So as you can see, the most goals they've scored in the home match is 8, and that's happened on 2 occasions back in the 1930s. Joint record win ever, 8-1 over Millwall, and then the 1958-59 promotion season where they beat Mansfield Town 8-3. Let's try a different question. When did Argyle score the most goals away in the single match?
So I'm just running the code there. And I suppose the key here is this V, which means visitor, and we now send the code through and we get our answer.
So this was the last game of the 1993-94 season where Argyle narrowly missed out on automatic promotion. They did their best. They won 8-1 away at Hartlepool United. Third question. What is Plymouth Argyle's best match in terms of goal difference, biggest winning margin?
So there's a more complicated code here because we have to take account of several features of the database. I'm not going to go through it. We're looking at when Plymouth Argyle was playing at home and when they were playing away. Then we just send that code through and we get the answer.
So multiple answers this time. The two of the matches we've seen before, the 8-1 win over Millwall and the 8-1 win away at Hartlepool. 7 goals is the biggest winning margin the club has ever had. They've also matched that twice more with 7-0 home victories over Doncaster Rovers back in the 1930s and over Chesterfield in 2003.
And we can ask a similar question. What was Plymouth Argyle's worst match in terms of goal difference? And there's just some modification to the code and we get the answer.
So yes, painful memories for those of us whose memories go back this far for Argyle supporters. A 9-0 defeat at Stoke City back in December 1960.
Gosh, that must have hurt you, John.
Before I was born.
Oh, right. Well, it's even thinking about it is probably painful.
It is.
Thank you very much for that, John. We hope to have shown you some of our work there on analysing Plymouth Argyle data and also analysing data from the whole of the league. And we also hope to have shown that we can use this in an outreach context, trying and showing how we can extract information about a particular club using our code. So thank you very much indeed. This work was published in a publication called Significance, and we, as John said at the beginning, we're grateful for our collaboration with Mario Cortina Borga from the Institute of Child Health. Thank you very much.